And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman. We're here to speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, at lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatzman.com. That's www.aaronkatzman.com. Be sure to follow me on both LinkedIn and Twitter and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. And it is my pleasure to bring on the big show today, Assaf Luxembourg, who is a partner at the creative agency Plus 972. He is a business development and marketing professional. He is passionate about promoting Israel through business, innovation, startups, entrepreneurship. He consults and advises startups on how to storytell, pitch, market, and business development. I'd like to welcome to the big show, Assaf Luxembourg.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for coming on the show. Let's just jump right in, okay? Can you tell us
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll launch into a sort of a bigger conversation.
Awesome. So what I do is a good question. I actually ask myself twice a day, every morning. My name is Assaf Luxembourg. I am very passionate about promoting Israel and showing the real face of Israel to the world. Israel is a concept, not just the state, the country. I do it mainly through business, tech, innovation, technology. I was there when the Startup Nation brand was built. Did not intend to be an entrepreneur, but that's what was planned for me. I started my own business. So I do a lot of things. If the audience is interested, you guys can check it out online. But aside of all that Israel advocacy, business, innovation work, I do two more things. I work a lot with Masa and with young professionals who come to Israel. And I'm also a partner at Plus 972. We are a global creative agency based in New York, but also active here in Israel, not in Jerusalem in the hills, but down in the plains next to the shore, but it's not that far away. And I'm leading Israeli operations. So this is it.
And what do you guys do? What is Plus 972?
So we are a creative agency. So we'll help clients scale their operation through marketing, branding, and strategy. We do a lot of marketing strategy, a lot of branding work. We provide web solutions. We have award-winning websites and a lot of design work.
Okay.
This is it, among other things.
Okay. So we've known each other for a while, and I decided to reach out to you because you wrote a couple of articles recently on Kalkalist, the Israeli economic paper, about sort of the world of startups, right? Israel's known now as startup nation, and money's flowing into Israel. Last quarter, set a record for billions and billions of dollars. Can you touch on a little bit about what those articles were about? And then we'll get into sort of what it takes for a startup.
Sure. So first of all, before I jump right in, I just want to say thank you for all the work you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing work. So on behalf of them who are watching right now, I want to tell you, thank you and keep on.
Appreciate that
work. I have like two sides. On the one hand, up until COVID, I met containers filled with boxes, filled with delegations who came to Israel. I was in that Startup Nation tourism industry in a way, big time. So I saw that side. On the other hand, I also work with Israeli startups, not just startups, but on their own marketing attempts. So as a storyteller, you get to see both sides. The two articles you were mentioned, which were posted on Kalkalist, which your audience may know as CTech, were mainly about lessons from our work here at Plus 972, me and the rest of the team. A little bit about how startups sometimes need to focus on things that are important as a marketing agency that works for them. So I shared two things which were important for me to communicate to Israeli startups who go global and go and build their brand. So of course it's all online and your audience can find it, but tachlis, as we say here, there were two basic messages. The bottom line was, first, don't be a startup in the startup business, which we can touch upon. You are a company that provides technology and innovation in an industry. So there is a startup industry, but there isn't really a startup industry. So that was a little bit about that. You can elaborate on that because it's related to your branding and your positioning. The other one, and that's something that maybe some of your audience can relate to, the other one was about the fact that as leaders of emerging startups, it's a little difficult to play on both sentences that go, look, we're not a small startup, we're a serious company, we're growing, we're this, we're that, and 2 seconds later say, oh, look, come on, it's a startup, so, you know.
Take it easy.
That's your brand, sometimes even more than the visual side or the copywriting side. Your brand is your reputation, as a wise man once said. So these were two things recently from our desk that we wanted to communicate, because we help with the marketing and the branding. These are things that are related more to company values and strategy. But these were the two tips.
And these are like mistakes that you see people make where you see a startup, right? It's almost like a child, right? They want to play both ends, right? They want to be grown-ups, but whenever something goes wrong, they sort of fall back. Well, I'm just a kid. What do you want from me? You know, in the startup world, you're out there, you're a business, right? You're competing against Microsoft and IBM, and you've got to, you know, you might be an immature company, but you have to be mature, right? Is that sort of what you're saying?
Right, and in a way, it's that tension. Now, the truth is obviously both, because you are aspiring to be a serious company, and you are still a startup. So I don't know if mistake is the right word, but it's that tension. It's kind of like how is it called? Slacklining, those guys who try to walk on that thin strip. Right. So you kind of need to make sure you don't fall, and you need to play on both ends with your both hands to be stable and not fall this way or the other. It's funny you mentioned parenting and child, because I think that analogy is actually mentioned in that post. But that impacts the way people perceive you, and it impacts the way people remember you, talk about you behind your back. And that's the meaning of branding in a way, at the end of the day. That's reputation.
Okay. Assaf, how can people get a hold of you?
How can people get a hold of me? I'm a pretty approachable guy. I basically built my professional network on LinkedIn from day one. I'm a known LinkedIn animal. I'm the Israeli with no Facebook or Insta account. So okay. I live, breathe, think, and dream LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm approachable through email. Anyway.
Okay, and we'll put the contact information in the notes.
And I do have a rule. I reply to everybody within 3 business days. So try me.
We'll put it out to the audience. We'll test that rule. You're tuning in.
It's a hard one to keep, but I really try.
You're tuning in to the Aaron Kantzman Show, where we speak about your life, your money, and your investments. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, AARON, at lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkantzman.com. That's www.aaronkantzman.com. You can follow me on both Twitter and LinkedIn, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're speaking with Assaf Luxembourg, and we're talking about the fact that startups shouldn't act like startups. Right? They should act. They should be a little bit more mature, even though the companies themselves are not so mature. Can you give us maybe a couple of examples where you've seen big mistakes that were made? People always like to.
And I try not to use the word mistakes. Yeah, so I try not. It's not mistakes. We all make mistakes all the time. Right. So it's not like you get a penalty because you made a mistake.
But maybe something we did which was like glaring, and then we can learn from that and not make the mistake twice.
So I'll give you an example. Again, no naming names, and never mind when was it, but a while back, a startup reached out to me. And like everybody, at the end of the day, what do they need? They need to raise money. it's a big thing they need to do in order to breach forward alongside building the product and yada, yada, yada. So at some point through the meeting, I understand that this is a company that developed some sort of a SaaS product that helps with logistical management. I mean, think backstage of restaurants where you have like things with an expiry date, or supermarkets, or things of that nature, and how to run it in an effective way. And they're telling me their story in a startup-y way. And, you know, they sit and they break down, you know, all the sources online and all the VCs and all the angels. And it's that cowboy town, which they want to get known at. And at some point I told them, you know, there's a guy called Rami Levy. He's not an angel. He is not a big VC, not that I know of. He is not a tech guru, but he knows a thing or two about logistic management and how technology can help. Now, he's also in a certain age and he was able to do a thing or two in life. Maybe he's your investor. Not only that, he can tell you how you can do 5X better than you. I mean, he has been living that. It's a different cowboy town. It's the logistics management, you know, that cowboy town. So you're not a startup in Startup Nation, Tel Aviv, trying to break to the world. You want to move to Silicon Valley and you want to raise money from VCs. It's not that cowboy town. You're in the logistical management cowboy town. Groceries, big supermarkets. These guys have their own kings and lords and, you know, veterans and cowboys. Go speak to them. So you're a company that brings innovation in that cowboy town. And if you really build a company on the right foundation, meaning you don't want to build something quick and sell out, you want to build a company you want to work for the rest of your life because you are passionate about this industry, there's a problem you fell in love with and you have to solve, that's the cowboy town you want to be in, because you will not be a startup forever. So it's a little bit about that. And when you communicate that, I believe that good things will happen over time.
Interesting. For those of you who don't know, Rami Levy started from absolutely nothing and turned into like the Israeli supermarket king. And he owns an airline. He owns a lot of phone company. He's like Mr. Business. So that's really interesting. Do you have any other tips, maybe another tip that you could sort of share for startups or for entrepreneurs, you know, to sort of get them on the right track and focused? I find that, you know, I used to work in venture capital a long time ago. And I think the biggest issue is that entrepreneurs often weren't, I don't want to say focused, but they weren't specific in their focus. They were sort of a little bit all over the place. And ultimately, as somebody wise told me a long time ago, you can't be a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? You have to be a master of something, and you can't try and solve everything. So do you have any other kind of ways?
Yeah, first of all, I absolutely agree. This is related to something we're not going to have time to talk about, which is all the work that I'm doing, especially with young professionals who come to Israel from overseas, on how to think like an entrepreneur, not as a profession, but for their entire career, even if they work for the bank. So this is related to the T-shaped mentality, as you said. Like, you need to master a few things, but not be only about them. You need to also know a little bit about others. So it's a little bit about that tension. And it's the same for startups. I would say this, there's a lot of wisdom on this online. I share some of it from great people that I was lucky to learn from. I blog and I write and I, promote, my thoughts out there. I will say one thing. It's funny, Mark Zuckerberg was the magic kid for like a decade, and now his image is a little bit different.
Right.
But let's take him as an example. So I have this idea that I ponder that in an alternative universe, his uncle worked for Microsoft, and he said, kid, you got a good thing going on with this college platform thing. And he booked him a meeting at Microsoft, and Microsoft loved it. And they told Mark Zuckerberg, come build this with us. And because he was passionate about connecting people online, that's what he really was passionate about, he went to do that at Microsoft. In another universe, which is our universe. He built an empire as an entrepreneur. But on a third one, the government came to him and said, the future is for this to be part of the, the civil rights that, Americans get to have as civilians. We want to build it through the Ministry of Communication, or I don't know what. And he went to work for the government. Who knows? Maybe he started a nonprofit. No matter how he accomplished his what and why, he was passionate about that what and why, not the how. And a lot of startups, when you really dig deep on why they started the startups, it's about the how. And many times also, you need to make sure that you're building a company based on pull factors and not push factors. You can't start, a stable company by hating your last job and you want to show them and do it your own way. It's not a good reason to start a company. You need something that you're passionate about solving. And you don't care if it'll mean that you'll build a company or work for someone else. You just want to solve that thing. And from what I learned from investors, that's something that they look for, that commitment to that scratch to solve this problem. So in a way, it's related to don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with the problem, which a very wise man by the name of Uri Levine said.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I really like that, that you really need to focus on the problem that you're trying to solve, and that should be your driving force, not all these other sort of tangential reasons. Assaf Luxembourg, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening.
Not a problem. Our pleasure. You've been tuning in to the Aaron Katzman Show, where we speak about your life, your money, and your investments. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, AARON, at Lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatzman.com. That's www.aaronkatzman.com. Be sure to follow me on both LinkedIn and Twitter, and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel.
I did.
From one subscriber to millions out there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.